so early. You guys want to get some coffee or something?
Can I get a cup of coffee? Black? Can't you see we talking? White?
Even little kids in Mexico drink coffee.
Well, I'm not a little kid in Mexico, okay?
That is the best coffee I've ever tasted.
A damn fine cup of coffee.
You want a cup of coffee?
No coffee.
Coffee drinker, huh?
Maybe we can grab some coffee?
Coffee! Coffee, 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 coffee!
God damn, Jimmy. This some serious gourmet shit. Me and Vincent would have been satisfied with some freeze-dried Taster's Choice, right? And he springs this serious gourmet shit on us.
Oh, welcome to Morning Coffee. As you can see, I am not Gary. My name is Christopher Moonlight Cooksey, and welcome to the stream, Morning Coffee. I don't have coffee, so let's see how quickly I can get fired from this new position of handling Tuesdays on behalf of Gary. And I want to say welcome to the people in the chat. Am I even doing this right? Penny is here. AF Watcher 88 and D-Bud Martin. Welcome, guys. And we're talking Werewolf by Night. I was told I would really enjoy this, and I've got some opinions about it. Monkey Jeebus, welcome. Did I do that correctly? I'm working on it. So yes, I have opinions on it. Not too favorable, but there are some reasons that I think that people may have liked it. Everybody joining me today likes it. So I guess, can we introduce them? Who's here? Martin? I'm alone. Six is here.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning, Six. Thank you for joining me on my first day hosting. And you liked Werewolf by Night, so we're going to talk about that. And also,
Good morning.
Good morning. Or in the month of October, where the moon is almost full, we will refer to you as Nosferatu Bubengraben. No, we're not going to.
Bubengraben. What? Oh my gosh.
This is my German.
Oh, that's funny.
And of course, Martin is with us. Martin, who I could not be doing this without. He is my savior. He is the rock that we all depend on, even though he doesn't believe it. I believe in you, Martin. Welcome.
Thank you.
So yeah, so let's just jump right in. Is there anybody else in the chat at the moment? Should I be
Anima?
Good morning. Yes, of course.
Yes.
Good morning, Penny. I've always wanted to do this. Now it's time for another Penny cartoon. Oh
my gosh.
I won't do that again.
That was pretty good.
Thank you. I thought Werewolf by Night was good. Brings back memories of when my brother and I watched the Universal Monsters with our dad. Yes, I am a monster kid. I love the Universal horror movies, as well as the Hammer horror movies, which you, John, was talking about on 70s stream last night before it got pulled down. And let's see, got my coffee ready as well. By the way, my boy Man-Thing got justice. He was so adorably frightening. I have opinions on that as well. But you guys are not going to like what I have to say about this today. But that's okay. Because as Six pointed out before we started, nobody's opinion is wrong. But I'm gonna have some objective things to say as well. Also explains why the Hulk is my favorite superhero. The Hulk is pretty rad. I was like,
He's one of my favorites.
Yeah, morning D-Bud Martin. Anima Confusia. Hello. I forgot to ask you good morning. Oh, of course, for the ladies in the chat.
Oh, I thought you were holding a cat.
Pumping Chris.
Full moon was last night. It didn't look quite so full when I saw it this morning, and it was really cool because it had,
Hey, Deepa.
you know, the clouds were going rapidly past it. I mean, it really looked like right out of a werewolf movie, which is really cool. Your German needs help, Chris. Your German needs help. Okay, who are you to criticize me on my German? Oh wait, no. Okay. Yeah. Yes.
It was all the pumping.
Yes, exactly. Doing some lifts, some low carb, high protein, lots of veggies, cocaine. I mean, steroids. I mean, vitamins.
My favorite.
Cancel Christopher Moonlight Cooksey. Yes, let's get that trending on Twitter. All right, so Werewolf by Night. I want to talk about, and by the way, this show is going to be limited to right up until 11 o'clock Central, because Gary just like, hey, you're hosting the show. I'm like, I am. I've got a meeting, and he's like, well, you're hosting it, okay, but I got to make that meeting cocaine. This hyperactive thing that I do is definitely not because of cocaine or any other street drug that I might find while wandering around at night, walking my dogs, and then meeting with a certain person that hands me something and I hand them a little money, and it's definitely not cocaine. But okay, so going back to Werewolf by Night, because a little ADD, again, not cocaine. I can see what it is that people really enjoyed seeing about this, and then I'll tell you why it didn't work for me. So first of all, it's in black and white. Let's see. Let's start with 6. Do you think that being in black and white kind of was a good homage to this genre?
Sure. I typically don't like movies in black and white. For whatever reason, it reminds me of Wizard of Oz, which is a movie I'm terrified of. So the ending was a little bit scary for me. But I really enjoyed the black and white. I loved just the shadows that it created. I loved how Elsa looked in the black and white. I much preferred her face in black and white. She's gorgeous. That's definitely, I mean, that's a compliment to her. But it reminded me of watching kids when I was a toddler, watching movies late at night when my parents thought I was sleeping. So I thought that was pretty cool.
I did like that too. What about you, John? Do you have any thoughts of the look of the show?
Yeah, while they used a filter to make it black and white, so it was a little off. Because I mean, you could tell it was shot in color, and then in post-production, they made it black and white. Because there's a certain look that films shot in black and white actually have. But yeah, it was a nostalgia thing for me as well. I grew up, when I was 11, I got my first TV in my room. It was just a little 13-inch black and white. And all the movies I watched were in black and white. But yeah, so I mean, it kind of throws back to that. But I used to watch a lot of the old monster movies. I like a lot of the film noir stuff. I like a lot of the stuff in that genre, like a lot of the 30s and 40s movies.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you brought up the film noir thing, because I had some thoughts about that. But before I go on, Martin, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah. For a period of time, my TV was black and white, so I grew to appreciate the black and white, and at the point that I love it on movies, photographies, and I like very much it was a nice touch. The movie show, the feature was in black and white. It helps with the ambience of the scenery. It's especially with the maze. It looks right from the era of the movies on black and white. I really liked it.
Yeah, and the maze was cool, and I think this is where I'll touch on, like I said, all the things that I appreciated about it. I did like the black and white. I felt like, like you said, John, it did look like a filter. I think they could have spent a little more time on the black and white. One of the things that really stood out to me is the werewolf who we only really get to meet truly at the end of the show, looked fantastic. The idea of the maze, I felt like was a great idea and looked cool and was almost had like a Frank Frazetta-esque feel to it, which I think is what resonated with a lot of people, was that the wolf kind of almost looked like a Frazetta werewolf combined with a Universal horror wolf, and the setting looked cool and kind of like an expansion of what was implied with a lot of the expressionistic Universal monster castles, and even like Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi and the Black Cat, kind of that aesthetic. And speaking of which, the main character, whose name is suddenly eluding me. And by the way, caveat, I never read the Werewolf by Night comic book, so I'm very much coming at this not only as a filmmaker, but as a normie.
I think it's Jack Russell.
Jack Russell. Yeah. Oh, like the terrier. But I loved that he entered with kind of this Boris Karloff look, with the makeup around the eyes and kind of that scarification and the, similar haircut. It was definitely an homage to him. So I thought that was really great. My problems with it, before I go into the story problems, I want to talk about the aesthetic of a Universal horror movie, which I thought they missed an opportunity with not playing with that aesthetic more, because there's a lot more to it than just black and white. One of the two things that really stuck out to me is kind of missed opportunities is, one, they did a lot of camera moves, which Universal horror movies just didn't do in the past because they were not able to do them. They didn't have gimbals or complex jibs, or, I mean, they did have jibs, but there was a lot of kind of just tracking shots on gimbals, and there were lens flares. Now, I know it was kind of cool to do it with the bloodstone, that it's red. It's the only thing that's not in black and white, and it kind of almost has an extra dimensional feel, which I thought was cool, and it kind of flared out with red lens flares. But it kind of took me out of that feeling, giving it lens flares and lots of camera moves. And maybe their thinking was that the old Universal horror camera work was antiquated, or they could improve on it. But I don't really think that that's the case. I almost think giving themselves that limitation kind of took away from the feel of it. And that's my personal opinion. I don't know if any of you have anything to say about that.
Well, I didn't get that. I didn't get that nuanced into it. I mean, yeah, it was modern filmmaking techniques, but it's a modern film or a modern show. So, I mean, I give it an excuse for that, as opposed to, I mean, you can be homage and then you can, just straight up replicate. So I think the fact they went, they did the black and white, and they had several, like the Wolfman makeup was definitely inspired by the classic, Universal Wolfman, as opposed to being the full wolf face that modern werewolves are.
I appreciated that for sure. Yeah, that Lon Chaney Jr. look, but again, updated. I like that he was beefy. I like that he was, like I said, like a Frank Frazetta character. He was larger than life and very muscular. And I realized the aesthetics of filming a Universal style thing are going to be maybe arbitrary to a lot of modern viewers. They're not going to appreciate that. I just, as a filmmaker, it's not so much that I'm upset at all. As a matter of fact, I'm going to say I'm not upset at all about any of this. I'm approaching it as just, to me, it was mediocre at best, and there were a lot of opportunities to play with things and make it really unique and remarkable. And that's one of the things that I'm always looking for. And I feel like people are just, Marvel especially is just not. And again, that's my taste. It's a sense of just like, man, we could do so much better than this. Every movie could, and it's kind of just like paint by numbers. And the idea that we had this kind of unique idea of going into the horror universe, and yes, like Monkey Jeebus says, like using some of the Marvel tropes and integrating them into these ideas, like chaos magic, like the Scarlet Witch would use, which again, as a normie, doesn't really mean much to me. Outside of the immediate plot. For a moment, I thought that one of the characters was Blade in there. And I thought, oh, cool. This is a great way to introduce Blade. Only for a split second, because I didn't actually know who the actor who was playing him was. But then it kind of occurred to me, no, they wouldn't do that. But I thought, again, that would have been a great opportunity to have Blade.
I agree with that.
Come in and be a part of that story, kind of like an introduction to him.
I wanted to echo what Das Wolfen said about the paying an homage and straight up replicating the style of movies. Since this is on Disney Plus, is this show supposed to be for kids? I don't remember the rating of it, but I think that if for kids or people in their teens and their 20s, are they necessarily going to be interested in a movie that is shot similar to the way that the old Universal monster movies were shot? Or do they need the flash? Do they need the bloodstone to be in red? And I agree with what you said, Chris, about the lens flares. Excuse me. I didn't even realize that until you pointed out. I was like, oh yeah, they did do a lot of that.
Yeah.
So I do agree with you about that. But when you look at a movie and you are discussing or critiquing the way that it's shot, are you keeping in mind who excuse me, who the show is made for, the network that it's on, the people who are making it? Or do you just have a broad brush of filmmaking in general?
Well,
I take into account the fact that it's a Disney Plus show.
Yeah. Can you guys hear the dog barking?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay.
I'm going to shut the door because the cats aren't joining me today. So,
yeah, I noticed the lens flare, but it wasn't enough that made me wonder if J.J. Abrams was around.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, I see, my problem, I love lens flares, and I actually think that they can look good in black and white. But the Universal monster style was from a time where a lens flare was absolutely, something to be avoided. It wasn't until like the 1970s that people started kind of, maybe late 60s, where people started to incorporate lens flares in as part of the artistic vision. For me, like I said, I think it's almost like something that, and again, this is a conversation Gary and I have had. We've kind of become desensitized to all of these things to the point where they just go right by us. And that in itself, for me, is a problem. When I say that, it would have been fun to not copy the Universal style, but study it and play with it in a way that becomes part of the show's vocabulary, like visual vocabulary, then that would have been interesting, and I think would have kind of almost awakened in people who, no matter who the audience is, like, oh, this is something a little different. This has its own texture, its own flavor. But if the audience isn't, the audience has to almost like be, I don't want to say shocked into recognizing that, but when I saw, for example, I used to take my kids to the Harry Potter movies. When I saw Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, suddenly I was like, let's see, what does it say? We have a sign in across the YouTube channel. What is that?
That's the private chat.
Oh, that's the private. Oh, okay. Oh. Sorry, I should be in the regular chat. I never know where to. I'm new at this. I'm gonna get fired. I'm telling you. But
no, you're doing great.
Yeah. But they, like, I was kind of, for a moment, I was like, wait a minute, this Harry Potter movie is different. It feels different. It's like, and I kind of leaned forward, like, whoa, what's going on here? And I think these days filmmakers don't think about doing that, and not just doing it for the sake of doing it, but doing it to make what they're working on something truly unique and have its own vocabulary, have its own voice. So what I see is a lot of filmmakers just kind of going like, well, Universal movies are black and white, so let's just make it black and white and it'll be just like a Universal movie. And there were things you could tell the artists working on it, like the heads of the previously slain creatures in the trophy room were really cool. The Boris Karloff look of Jack Russell, very cool. I also really thought that it was fun that this eccentric monster hunter would have his corpse be a puppet with a voiceover.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
Stuff like that I like. But it feels like there's still kind of like I don't want to say a laziness, but almost like a paint by numbers thing that all these kind of filmmakers and storytellers in charge just keep going to, rather than trying to figure out how to take these things and really pump them up and make them unique. Like the story itself, I'm sorry to say, but it was just, it was an affirmation of why I had stopped watching all this stuff to begin with. And like I said, I maybe it's unfair to say I was tricked into coming back.
What do you mean all that stuff?
Well, okay. So for example, Jack Russell was shaping up to be a very interesting character, but then he took a back seat to what's her name?
Elsa,
right? And Elsa, unfortunately, to me, wasn't a beautiful actress. I absolutely agree. She looked great. But Jack Russell immediately took a back seat to her, and it became her story. And what was her story? Not really much of anything. Then she's cranky, and she's a disappointment. I would have liked to have seen it explored exactly what the falling out between her and her father was. Hey, Keith is here.
Hello, Keith.
What was that dynamic? What, she grew up with this family of eccentric monster hunters. Why did she leave? Why is it so important that this story suddenly becomes about her? And then you kind of have this other story, which again, I admit it's an interesting idea of having like his family dynamic versus her family dynamic, but we're never really allowed to explore that or understand why it has any real meaning, except for she's taking her place, and it's everything goes pretty easy for them, and then she ends up at the end just kicking up her feet and like, I'm in charge of this place now, girl boss. And it just kind of went, yeah, this is the same thing. And Jack Russell was kind of like taking a back seat to her. And, was it Monkey Jeebus, I think, was the one that mentioned Man-Thing, who is now named Ted. And I know the reason he's not called Man-Thing, he's called Ted, is so that they don't have to pay royalties to the artists that worked on in the past. And
which sucks.
Yeah. And I have that straight from the horse's mouth, by the way. I had a conversation without dropping names, because I don't know if he wants me to name him, but a particular Man-Thing artist who's a friend of mine. I told him about it. He said, yeah, it's, and Man-Thing, I don't know. He's one character that I remember reading in the 80s and 90s, making appearances in different comics. He was a character to be terrified of. He touched you, you were done. And they sort of did that here, but now he's like shrugging and like being kind of this like baby character. And I just, again, just making jokes out of these characters that could be very interesting and intimidating and meaningful. And I just wasn't getting anything from it except exactly what they do every time with these characters, and to varying degrees. Like I said, there was some cool stuff about it. I just, like Gary says, it might be a little better, but it's still a low bar. So,
good morning, Keith. How are you?
Yeah,
I'm all right. Look, I had already become aware of a lot of the eccentricities about this particular release. I celebrate the fact that Michael Giacchino got an opportunity to do something kind of cool and join the ranks of others who have changed their careers in Hollywood. One of them being Ben Burt. But all of this is really just more of the same of what we've been getting. And that isn't to say this is a bad thing at all, okay? But personally, I just don't see being connected to Disney that we're ever really going to get what many fans like myself really loved about Marvel's horror, which really is, I should say, Stan Lee's Marvel's horror, because that wasn't always a part of Marvel Comics until Stan Lee brought it back just in time to restart Marvel again in the 60s. But as we learned from his personal assistant, who you all know as the Professor, aka St. Louis's own Denny O'Neil, the basis for a lot of those characters that he co-created and created in the 60s when he brought Marvel back were all horror based because Stan Lee was a horror fan. That is the one element that when many people try to create heroes like Marvel, that they probably either didn't know, don't factor in, that when you look at something like Iron Man, the Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, these are all horror-based characters. They've just been tweaked a little bit to make them a little more socially acceptable.
And that's, that's what Sam Raimi, I think, recognized in Spider-Man with the original, and why he was such a good choice to do the original Spider-Man trilogy.
Well, that and the fact that he was a fan of the original Spider-Man team and stories. That's the other thing that not many people don't understand. Once Steve Ditko left, there were many fans, and I assume Sam Raimi among them, who just stopped reading.
Yeah, well, that was me too. I haven't picked up a modern comic for obvious reasons in a long time. I do want to, before we continue, I do want to acknowledge that we have some more people joining us, which we've got Alex Moore, we've got let's see, your Muslim uncle,
our Muslim uncle,
our Muslim uncle. Decepticons Cave of Villains, welcome. And if I miss anybody, like I said, I'm new at this, so please,
Chris,
forgive me. Yes, sir.
I'd like to not really rebut, but make some comments about some of the points you made earlier.
Please do.
First of all, you look at this is not a criticism, but you look at it from the view of a filmmaker, because that's what you are.
Mm-hmm.
The majority
trying to satisfy and give above and beyond to the audience.
But most people don't have that, they aren't film students. They haven't studied film. They haven't, they just watch it for entertainment value. As long as it's entertaining, it's fine. And so it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to have the nuances that you want it to have, because that isn't its purpose. Its purpose is exclusively to entertain people and entertain the majority of people. And as far as I forgot what I was going to say. Keith came on and now I lost my train of thought.
I am so sorry.
Joe's Atmosphere, welcome. Yeah, well, I would say just to, my daughter was watching the other day Ratatouille, and I very much relate to Remy in the fact that, I see, talk in terms of food for a moment. You see people eating certain things, and they enjoy it, and they're satisfied with it. As a filmmaker, and this is what I want every filmmaker to think about, and of course, I'm always going to be looking at it through that lens, but that Remy and Ratatouille would say, like, hey, you're just kind of working this down, but have you stopped to consider these flavors, these combinations? And then, the idea that he became this successful chef, of course, unbeknownst to the people in the restaurant, but it was because he was introducing them to new things that, like I said before, make them lean forward, go, oh wait, what's this? This is different. This is new. This is maybe a little better than what I've been content to consume. So that's the lens that I will always be looking at it through.
Well, I would like to. Oh, continue, John.
Well, I remember what my other point I was going to make. You had pointed out about the you wanted to know about more of Elsa's backstory and stuff. They're only working with an hour.
Not even. I think
not even. It's 52 minutes, and that includes credits. So, yeah. So I mean, they don't have, and that's the way it was designed, is to only be an hour. So they don't have a lot of time to go into the backstory. They just basically give you enough. They tell you, hey, she fell out with the father. Her stepmother hates her. She didn't grow up as a monster hunter, but she got training elsewhere, because she even says, not from you.
Yeah. And I will speak to that, because as a storyteller, I can tell you that backstory is generally not storytelling. And as a writer, when I learned to write, it was usually encouraged you figure out all your backstory and then you leave it out of the script. You just let it inform the character's choices, and kind of in a kind of reverse engineering in the audience's mind, their behavior kind of informs you of what that backstory is in a roundabout way where it can be inferred. I've definitely seen a lot more storytelling packed into that amount of time. One of my favorite animated movies is Corpse Bride, which is only 75 minutes long. And that movie is just layers and layers of information and storytelling in a very entertaining way. So I don't think that it can't be done. And I think one of my complaints about current Marvel is that we're dealing with writers that they don't have any inclination. They're not even aware that it can be done. They're just kind of doing it the same way again and again, because they're, quite frankly, in a job that they're not qualified for and they haven't had the training for.
How much is that the actual writer's fault? Now, there's a lot of bad writers that Marvel has, but how much is that the writer fault, and how much is that the people above them going, no, we need this?
Probably it's a bit of both. I mean, but again, that doesn't actually have anything to do. Well, of course it does, but to a normie watching it on the screen, they're not ever going to think about whether they like it or not, whose fault it is. A lot of times the director is the one that takes the heat if a movie doesn't turn out well. And the director is probably like you said, they're beholden to the producers and they're working with a script that isn't very good. And yet they're the ones that take the fall a lot of the time. I would say that, there was just more that could have been done with the characters' actions. And I'll give you one example, something that really just kind of was typical of Marvel and irked me to no end, was they just kind of stupidly get locked into this mausoleum. And after a few minutes of conversation, the solution is, oh, I just remembered in one of these coffins is one of my relatives that keeps keys to the mausoleum with me. It's like there was, and that was just exposition information. There was nothing. She didn't have to do anything to solve that problem that would have told us a bit about her, because this is the thing, the way that people handle situations, the way the characters handle situations will inform the audience a little bit more about who they are and what it is that makes them an interesting character. There was no kind of there was really nothing. War Monkey, welcome.
Hi, War Monkey.
And let's see, are we missing anybody else? Nope, we got it. But yeah, I feel like, again, everything was fine, but it was the same solutions that we see in every current year Marvel story. Like I said, the main character taking a backseat to a secondary character. I really would have loved to see a story of Jack Russell and how being a werewolf affects his life and how he uses it to, and this is the thing, we see him become a werewolf, and we see that as another act of convenience. Like, oh, the moon's not even full. Oh, well, we can turn you into a werewolf. The villains very stupidly just like killed themselves. But like, all they had to do was, you know, do the execution themselves or whatever. I don't know what the solution is, but we didn't actually see how being a werewolf actually factors into how Jack Russell conducts himself, how it makes him a superhero or whatever it is. It just happens to be the convenient thing that happens that gets them out of the last situation.
Well, he has that whole conversation about the other guy talking about, you know, it's like, hey, this is a side of myself that I don't want anything to do with, but I'm stuck with him. You know, it's not, you know, it's not so much that he's a hero. He's not. But
he just tells us that you know, that we take, you know, like Monkey Jeebus said, he said he locks himself up once a month.
Yeah.
Well, we don't actually see that. We don't see the repercussions of it. He's just like, I'm a good guy and I lock myself up once a month. No problem. It's not a problem. He's got it solved.
Well,
you know,
a lot of this is very reminiscent of how they handled Bruce Banner originally and how over time they've changed the character. What they've done with this particular character is pretty much where Banner was at the start of his run coming into phase 1.
Yeah.
And
I would have loved to have seen it be a problem for him. And I would have loved to have seen, you know, what is his relationship with, like, how does he know Man-Thing? How is that part of his family? You know,
but when are we supposed to see all that in 52 minutes?
That goes back to my point about the time length.
Yeah.
They didn't do, if they would have given a whole series, we would have seen that. But this isn't. This is just a special. This is just, hey, here's these characters. You know, if it gets a lot of traction, I'm willing to bet that they'll come back to these characters, and you'll get to see that.
Yeah,
I hope so. But
I do too. I want to see more Man-Thing.
I'm not going to hold my breath because, given the way things are going and their relationship to Disney, I'm not so certain that they're really going to spend that much more time. I think we've entered a period now where we haven't quite reached the Walter Hamada fall of Warner Brothers time period here, where he's just greenlighting left and right. But I think things are changing for Disney. And I think they're trying to pop out a lot of stuff. They're trying to put a lot of stuff out there. And I'm afraid that the quality of a lot of what we've gotten isn't up to what many fans would like it to be. And I think what we're going to have to do is just sort of temper our expectations from here on out. I'm not even sure if we're really going to get Blade the way they originally promised us.
Well, no, and this is, and by the way, shout out to Andy Masterson, who just popped up a comment, and welcome to the honoring his ancestry. I honestly, you know, you guys say, well, there wasn't enough time to tell all this sort of thing in the story. This is the stuff that should have been the story.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that should have been the story, in my mind, took a backseat to just stuff happening.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's a way to introduce the characters, but the Disney Plus problem at this point is the same problem that Marvel Comics is having, and most of the comic book industry is having at the moment. And I had this conversation on my own channel with Peter Samedi, is everything now is just a pitch for the next thing.
Yep.
They're not actually giving us a story that has any, you know, real bold style, has anything to say about the characters. It's more of just like, here are the characters and here's what they do. And again, everything is just kind of it's not a problem that they have to tackle and grow and evolve to solve. It just becomes a momentary inconvenience, and then suddenly, like, oh, well, I'm going to turn into a werewolf and kill everybody, and then we'll be fine. Or, oh, the keys happen to be in the mausoleum that we're locked into, so it's fine. And
I think you're oversimplifying it, man, because, you know, it's not like the way, well, I become a werewolf and everything will fine. He wasn't. He wasn't expecting to do that. he didn't want to do that.
But he had a
even
simple solution
he
for it when
even
it
said,
happened,
kill me before I kill you.
which is,
Just-
you know, standard stock
He's
werewolf.
tormented. He's really tormented. So I think you're being a little too harsh with.
another
Well,
thing
he
you
didn't see that he was tormented, and like I said, it's like, I'm going to turn into a werewolf and kill you unless I smell you and make eye contact with you, and you'll be fine. And then that's exactly what happens. You know, no problem. And then Man Thing shows up again. It's like, where is he? He's like, he went that way. You're like, thanks, see you later. I did like the scene at the end, though, where he's like, you know, back to human and Man Thing gives him coffee. I thought that was kind of a fun moment. But again,
Go ahead, Joe.
I was gonna say another thing you've got to look at is you got to consider their demographic. The demographic they're shooting for has the attention span of a gnat.
Oh, geez.
well, this goes
so
to this is
how
what
much. Well, I understand. I know what we want and what we would prefer, but you've got to look at it from the other side and say, you know, they've got to get their demographic. They've got to get the people of that demographic, their eyes on their product. They're not going to do that by having this complicated backstory that you've got to see before you get to the action part. Everybody wants to get to the action part, so they get to the action part.
Well, that's not what I'm saying, though. That's not, because all storytelling is conflict and action. I'm not talking about backstory. Matter of fact, I did say that I'm actually, well, you know, the story of who they are as people can be told through their actions. I wasn't getting any of that. As far as the audience demographic, the problem with the audience demographic is it's not there. And it's diminishing. They're getting diminishing returns on these things because of the lack of story. People are just losing interest. So I think it's, you know, like I said in another live stream that we did, they're going to average out at some point. And the problem with the audience's attention is that the stories that we're creating they're facilitating that diminishing attention span. I do believe that the audience attention is there if you give them something good. You know, so, but again, my standards are probably going to be unreasonably high for most people, but you know, I'm like the personal trainer that wants to push things beyond what they are. So I do understand if you're not, you know, if you're going like, yeah, it was fine, you know, I enjoyed it. And if you enjoyed it, that's good too. There were things, you know, the look, all that before, that those were things that I can appreciate, and God bless the artists involved with it. I would like to see those artists have better material. And
I don't appreciate the implication that maybe we have low standards because we like the show. You have different standards, and you can only come from the place of a filmmaker. You mentioned that you wish that we could have seen, you know, where's Elsa been? Why did she leave? Why has she been gone for so long? What's she been doing? What this special did for me, I want to know everything about this little corner of the universe. I went on Amazon and I ordered some sort of Elsa book. I couldn't find any of the comics for a reasonable price. This special made me want to dive in and know everything about everything that's going on around it. And the what John said about the audience, that they don't have the would you say the attention of a gnat or something? Yeah.
Which I actually,
excuse me. Yeah. I typically watch TV for about 20 minutes and then I wander off or I fall asleep. I watched this entire episode because I was riveted by it. And like I said, I wanted to know more about what was going on. So as far as holding an interest for 52 minutes, John, did you say?
Yep.
Is that what it is? Yeah.
Well, plus credits.
I watched. Yeah, and I watched the credits too because I was looking for. I knew that there wasn't an end credit scene, but I wanted to see everything that they had to give me about this special. I wanted every second of it.
Well, let me at least put it this way. I think I, as a lifelong Marvel fan, am just a little worried about the Disneyfication of Marvel. Meaning that we're sliding into even taking some of the really cool elements that were kind of very edgy about Marvel, the kind of stuff that, you know, as a kid, we really weren't supposed to be reading. and kind of giving it a nice golly gee. I wish kind of sort of not quite everybody in the family watch it type mentality, but we're leading ourselves there. This thing really was meant to open up that whole new wing of Marvel that they've been trying to get everyone to and that they've been talking about. We already have Moon Knight. We're going to get Blade. With the introduction of Man-Thing, we are headed directly into the supernatural wing of Marvel.
Midnight Suns.
But again, let me just state, I'm not sure we're really going to get it the way that I think that those of us that are fans have known it to be.
Well, there's no way we're going to get Lilith.
There's no way we're
going to speak to let me speak to both what Monkey Jeebus said and Six, what you said as well. So one of the good things that I think that this show did, and what you're telling me it did for you, is it made you interested in learning more about this world, which I think is good because, and again, I think part of that is there were interesting things presented that I think could have been expanded on, or at least hinted at enough and then left to, as an opportunity to explore more within that world. I think that's a very good thing. Part of the problem I had with it is all the interesting things that they did, the society of monster hunters. I think the monster hunters were given very brief glimpses at their characters that, honestly, if they wanted to continue on with this story in some way, it would have been fun to let them live. It would have been fun to let them all live and have them escape and be a future threat that could go off into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. One of the things that I really was kind of disappointed in is, and like Monkey Jeebus says, you don't go and fight Thanos right off the bat. There were all these good ideas that were immediately taken right off the table. What if Elsa had escaped with Jack Russell, leaving her stepmother, still in charge, but instead she just solved all the problems and kicked up her heels at the end and went, I'm the boss now. And that happened really easy. Stuff like that just kind of bothers me because, like I said, it's a special. Yeah. But I think they wrapped it up too neatly without giving us enough of what I think really could have been the meat of this. And if you guys enjoyed it, that's fine. I don't think that speaks to, and like I said, I don't agree with the attention span of the Nat. I think that the audience, the more they're given, the more that they'll want, the more quality of substance they're given. And there was some quality of substance there.
Well, I was being hyperbolic.
Yeah. And I appreciate hyperbole very much. So you keep on being hyperbolic. Do you guys, I actually have to go. Do we want to wrap up this show, or do you guys want to continue on without me? Because now, once I'm gone, you can say whatever you want about me.
We already do in the group chat that you're not in.
Oh, yes.
You didn't have to tell him.
I've seen screen.
I'm not even in that group chat, so
want. So, but yeah, not everyone's gonna just. Hey, odd man out. I get it, but I just think we can do better. And as an independent filmmaker, I work to do better. But if every once in a while, I like eating at Sonic. Even though I like cooking at home much better meals than Sonic can provide. It's just there's that diverse range of what are you craving at the moment. But I would have liked to have seen it be better. Yes.
Hi, Max.
This is for you.
You're lifting Brock Mags in.
Max, did you watch the show and did you like it?
To the stream yesterday. Or was it, when was Brett on? I just remember hearing cocaine. I'm like, I got to get on the stream. Anyway, yeah. So again, let's see. Let's thank everybody. Let's see. So let me do this again. I'm new at this. We got, first of all, thank you to John Das Wolfen, Six, Keith, and of course Martin, our rock, and Penny, AF Watcher 88, D Bud Martin, Monkey Jeebus, please come again. Gary does it better. Anima Confucia, thank you. You're awesome. Alex Moore. We had so much that we didn't talk about because we were going to talk about what Kevin Smith said about Marvel directing Marvel and Star Wars is a fool's errand. Next time. Let's see. I lost my place. Alex Moore. Your Muslim uncle, our Muslim uncle. Decepticons Cave of Villains. Joe's Atmosphere. War Monkey. Woo-hoo. Andy Masterson and Magitech. Mags, again, this is for you and all the ladies. You know you love it. All right. Is that it? Is that all we do?
I think so.
All right.
I'm rolling the credits and goodbye,
Take
everybody.
it away. Thanks, everyone. For
Be sure to join my channel at 4 for my live stream.
Yes.
4 Central.
Right, this.
Allow me to pimp my channel.
Das Wolfen. Nosferatu Bubengraben.
Well, rolling credits.
Bye, everybody. Go watch Werewolf by Night and judge for yourselves.